Hi guys. So this is probably the first video in the class. It's the first time you kind of seeing my image on the screen, kind of leading you through material. We're definitely going to use this to kind of extend the classroom, push the boundaries of the classroom so that we can protect more of that time in class for the interesting and the fascinating and the cool stuff to kind of take a look at history on the ground level. Get in there, get our hands dirty, take a look at primary sources, take a look at Socratic seminars, do more project, more group-based work. But to do that, we got to push things outside of the classroom. It requires a bit of a responsibility on yourself. You're going to be doing these mainly as homeworks. Sometimes this is going to be video. Other times it's going to be reading articles. You're responsible for both. But let's go ahead and get into this first one. So American history really is starting off. Um, we know the world exists before 1492, right? 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and all that stuff. That's usually when history courses before had started American history. Columbus arrived, so there's nothing going on before that. But what's happened recently is we pushed that back further so that we can take a look at one, how did Columbus get to where he went? What's pushing him? What's pushing him out onto the open ocean? And then also what's happening in the world beyond Columbus, right? So what does he find when he gets over here to the Americas? What's going on in Asia? Why is he trying to get there? Why is that so important to him? All right, so let's kind of go ahead and get into this. What was the world like before Columbus? This 1491, this mythical 1491 day. In Europe, there's two Re's that we got to take a look at: the Renaissance and the Reconquista. These two forces really drive what's going on in Europe. So let's take a look at what's happening. How's the Renaissance coming about? What has Europe dealt with in the previous centuries? The big thing is that Europe is growing. They are starting to intensify their agriculture. So what does intensify mean? They are putting more and more land under crops. So less forests, less wild areas, more crops. Growing mainly wheat to try to make bread, and really that's going to be the staple for your diet, no matter who you are. Bread is going to be the big thing in Europe. Peasants are working that farmland. They're kind of being forced to by the lords, the, the serfdom, right? Very few wild forests, as we kind of mentioned. Only nobles are allowed to hunt. So if you remember to the Robin Hood story, or Robin Hood is, and the people of the forest are accused of committing a grand crime, treason, for being in the forest and for killing the lords or the nobleman's stag. That's a high crime back then because only nobles, only the privileged were allowed to hunt. So fishing is going to benefit especially the poor classes. The problem with that is so many people now are eating all the fish. The fish are now running low as well. So they're going to suffer from routine famines. One of the things I want to do is I want to kind of get you into that frame of reference. What did medieval Europe look like? And this is during the Renaissance. So we have a lot of paintings that, especially in the Northern Renaissance, focus on the daily lives of people. So you see that here with everybody going out and threshing the wheat or harvesting the wheat. We see it here in this town scene. Now, granted, this is also this is kind of like the fairy tales, the moral fables of the Dutch. But you also see what a Dutch town looked like at the time period. Crazy stuff going on. Just dirty everywhere, noisy. If you can just kind of put yourself into that picture right now, you're probably not smelling a lot of good smells. It's not flowers and perfumes. It's sweat and dung and dirt. Just disgusting smells. It's probably loud as all get out. You're probably wanting to run to the next town over or out there into the ocean just to kind of get away from this maddening sound. Another thing, this is kind of a more realistic version of what that that kind of northern European town would look like. But still, you have a lot of people in a close area. You have a lot of animals, and that's going to be key. We'll get back to that later, but a lot of animals in very close proximity, a very close relationship between the people and the animals. Um, and one of those things is going to be the diseases. There's a video I'm going to link that I'm going to require you to look at later when we get to the Columbian Exchange that focuses on these diseases and how they come about and how they spread. But this is kind of showing the Black Plague, right? When the Black Plague hit Europe. And one of the principal means of it is these trade routes. They've developed so many trade routes in Europe from Asia, from Africa, that are going to bring in not only great wealth, but also pathogens, diseases. So the impact of the Renaissance, coming out of the Dark Ages. So we've had the Black Plague, we've had this area, this time in Europe where everything is all about death and destruction. There's no hope. People stop studying things, stop innovating, and now they're starting to innovate again. How they're doing that is they're going back and taking a look at the ancients, the Greeks. More importantly, now that we're involved in the Crusade, trying to liberate the Holy Land, also looking at Islamic scholarship, Islamic sources. What are they doing? What do they know about the world? That's going to be key with navigation. Navigation is sailing. All right. A lot of those inventions that are going to help are going to be Islamic in nature. All right, the boom in the trade between city-states. So after we have the Black Plague, kings are kind of building up their wealth, but the big way they're building up their wealth is through these merchants. So there's this rising merchant class that's kind of powerful. I mean, not as powerful as the kings. They are carving out their own kind of area where they dominate a lot of things. They have the money to be able to fund stuff. So the traders are becoming very wealthy, especially those that deal with what we'll talk about next, which is the Silk Road. So let's go from Europe for a second and go out to Asia. Let's take a look at what's going on there. What are they trying to get to? What are they trading? What is the basis for Europe's wealth at the time? A lot of that is going to be just anything from Asia because that's what Europeans are coveting at the time. Silk, spices, and China. China here not being the country, but the porcelain that is going to be highly prized within the nobles. A lot of this is focused on the nobles. Some of it is going to be more of the kind of everyday person. Silk, you should know what that is. Very fine, lightweight, smooth, soft kind of textile that kings and queens are going to love to make their clothes out of. Spices. So the spices, what we're talking about with spices, we're talking about cinnamon, we're talking about nutmeg, we're talking about salt and pepper are all going to be coming from Asia, and that's going to make up, and the reason why they're using it, trying to cover up the taste of kind of putrid meat. Meat you're getting, again, not really a whole lot of refrigeration, so you either have to have it heavily salted or you have to preserve it in some other way. Drying it works. The big thing is some of it's going to be off, so you got to cover that up with heavily spiced. How Europe is getting this is through the Silk Road, especially the land route with the Silk Road. This connection to China and India. All right, so also in Asia we have this guy. This guy is a big deal, even though he's not really known about in Europe, in American classrooms today. We don't really talk about Zheng Kai that much. But to give you a perspective, Columbus's ship, right, Santa Maria, the flagship of his fleet, would be about the size of this one. Zheng Kai has treasure ships, much larger than that. So Zheng Kai he's going to sail for China and make contact actually with East Africa. So the Indian Ocean is basically his playground. And a lot of historians note that he stops at the southern tip of Africa. But how would history have changed if he kept going? If he had made that connection to Europe? If he had kind of gone beyond that known world? He turns back and goes back to Beijing, And he brings a giraffe with him. He's making people do this ceremony called kowtow, where they're going to give him gifts. All right. So this is a picture of the Silk Road, right, and all those links. The key one is going to be right around in here. There is a city that is going to dominate the land routes of the Silk Road. All right. Everything going into Europe on the Silk Road is going to be funneled in through this one city called Constantinople. Today we know it as Istanbul. It's in Turkey. It is the dividing line between Europe and Asia. If that city, and the city at this time is held by European Christians, but the Ottoman Turks are outside its door in 1453. If Constantinople falls, the Silk Road could be closed. And that's going to be the issue. All right. Spoiler alert, it does fall. The reason why it falls, well, just take a look at these triple walls here. Think of Europe an invading army trying to go up against those three walls. That is not looking like a fun time for me. I'm saying, you know what, no, that's all right. You can have that city, I'm going. That is a very strong fortress there. Most people believed it can never fall. Then this shows up. This isn't really canon. So while they did have these medieval siege weapons like trebuchets, mangonels, and catapults and all those things, the Ottomans bring cannons with them. They've traded with Asia, they have gunpowder, they have knowledge of it, so they've created cannons. And these cannons just aren't some small things. They're the size of these tables in this room, the bore, the inside round of it. So they're going to smash through those walls, open up a breach, and in 1453, the Turks are now in control of Constantinople. Now, they're not going to turn off the trade of the Silk Road. That's a lot of times how it's explained. But they are going to say that, hey, if you want to trade through Constantinople, if you still want those silks, you still want those spices, you got to pay. You got to pay. I'm the middleman now. I hold this one big advantage. I'm the gatekeeper. You want through my gate, you went to Asia, pay the price. Europeans are okay with that to a certain extent, but a lot of kings are saying, you know what, I think there's an opportunity for us here to find another route to Asia, and we can get rich, like the Turks are doing by holding Constantinople. Spain and Portugal are going to be the two main players. So let's take a look at the Moorish rule in Iberia. Iberia is the peninsula in which Portugal and Spain both sit. For the past few hundred years, they've been trying to kick out the Moors. So who are the Moors? The Moors are going to be North African Muslims who have kind of invaded way back when and have stayed in Spain. They've developed their own culture. Most of the architecture that we know of in Spain is Moorish. Right? But now the Spanish people are starting to unite, and they have this identity, this we are Spanish, we are Catholic, we want our country back. So they're starting to unite. They're starting to put their country back together and push the Moors out. Same thing's going on with the Portuguese. And eventually, the Portuguese are going to get their country kind of back first. This guy enters in. He's a huge deal in 1491. Prince Henry the Navigator is going to encourage his country to go on ocean-going voyages of exploration. Go beyond. Go where that horizon line is. Go past it. Keep going. And the direction I want you to go is south. We got to take a look at Africa because we think, and this is the big thing with Portuguese exploration, south past Africa. South past Africa for Portugal. All right. They're going to establish ports as they go along the African coastline, but their real goal is to round Africa. And if they can round Africa, they know that they can get in the Indian Ocean, and there's a straight line to Asia. He's using new technologies, the astrolabe, the sextant. Both of those are kind of charting where you are on the face of the earth. The other one's going to be the caravel, and this is based off of a Islamic ship design, not the ship's hull, But this triangular sail works just like an airplane's wing, where it can actually go against the wind and it will pull itself in a direction. You can imagine that's going to be a big deal. You don't have to worry about going where the wind wants you to go now. You can fight against the wind. Right, so this is what happens with um, their colonization and then their sailing. Diaz is going to be the first person to go past the Cape of Good Hope and say, you know what, we found the southern part of Africa. Let's go into Asia. That's in 1488. In 1488, that's not very long before Columbus. So if you want to kind of think about Columbus in this way, he's playing catch up. He's the quarterback for Spain. All right, last minute. If Portugal establishes this route, they're going to have all the money. They're going to have all the wealth. Spain is looking for a miracle, a Hail Mary pass into the end zone. That's what Columbus is. Instead of going south, because Portugal owns all this, they're going to go west. All right, so let's take a look at the Reconquista. Let's see how Spain gets their stuff in order and pushes Columbus out to the west. So again, Spain is divided, but it's coming together. One of the big things that's happening here is the power couple. All right, Ferdinand and Isabella. They're unifying two parts of Spain, Castile and Aragon. Right, when they marry, they've pretty much put Spain back together. Now they're no longer divided. They have one army. They have one economy. They have one purpose. They have one religion. And they're going to be able to kind of use that force to push the Moors out. That push ends up in Granada in 1492. That year, 1492, pivotal year. Granada falls after many years of siege, right? And now Spain has their country. They have a lot of power because they've now united, and now they're going to get into the exploration game. So that's kind of the context that he's dealing with. All right, so I'm going to split this here. I'm going to make a second video with Africa and the Americas.